Well, we just watched episode 3 of season 2 of Daredevil Born Again, and now I think you guys understand what I meant when I said this is the part where it gets really good. It's like a warning right up front. I'm going to spoil the events of this episode. I would recommend watching it if you've enjoyed this show and plan to watch it, especially because this is the one I've seen the most with the clips being shared online. And I think that makes sense because I knew exactly what clip it would be, and there is like a nice 2-minute stretch, and that's the perfect amount of time for like a Twitter video or maybe a TikTok, I don't know. But it is very easy to run into this in the wild in a way that I don't think too much for the rest of the season has been. Next week there's going to be a lot of that too, so I would say maybe stay as up to date as you can with your Daredeviling. But I want to talk about it because I do think this episode did a couple things that are very interesting. Things that will pay off over the course of the season, and things that maybe I wasn't expecting. So this episode starts where episode 2 left off, where Karen has kidnapped one of the anti-vigilante task force guys, and Matt's like pretty reasonably like, this might be a bad idea. And this is where, and I think we get a little bit of this in the previous episodes, but this whole thing of like why I think this is the episode, it's not just because of the fight scene at the end or anything like that. I think part of it is characters get to make strong choices in this episode, and it defines their arc in the future, and it also gives the actor some room to play around. I think we see that a lot with Karen this episode. You get a little bit of it in the scene with Matt, but also in that little monologue where she's saying, like, everything keeps getting worse and Fisk keeps winning. I think Deborah Ann Wool, and I've always liked her, but I think she's bringing a different energy. And we talked about it a little last week, but this very dangerous Karen energy, I think it's a really good lane for her character, especially because some of the best parts of Daredevil pair Matt against someone else, right? Matt and Foggy having an argument, Matt and Frank having an argument, Matt and Bullseye having like a, back and forth, maybe not necessarily an argument. But I like that in this season, a lot of it is Matt and Karen, where they're trying to get the same thing, and Karen is maybe just more extreme, Matt's got a little too much idealism, and Karen's more realistic. I like that as a lane for her to play in here. I think this scene also has one of the funniest jokes in the episode, probably one of the funnier jokes in the series so far, when Matt is interrogating the ATVF officer, tells him, your line comes back.
Nice, he's telling the truth.
I like that we see Matt able to turn it on, kind of the same way that Batman, in a lot of his media, turns it on, where like he's got normal mode and then he switches into Batman mode because he needs to scare somebody. I think it's interesting how little, and we'll see a little bit of this in the episode, how little people know about Daredevil. And I think maybe we take it for granted because we see Daredevil do stuff. And also, the show hasn't been incredibly consistent with this. But like, he does operate as kind of an urban legend, the same way that Batman does in a lot of media, as opposed to like a superhero like Spider-Man. And I like that that pays off here for Matt. They also get stupid lucky that this guy wants to join their rebellion. But I do think part of what is so good about Powell as a character, every week I say a nice thing about Powell, but again, like, he does feel really unhinged, and he is the kind of guy, and this is a part of these like fascist regimes, they push people out. Like, sure, they attract all the Cole Norths and the people that want to be really violent, but like part of that problem with that system is it is going to alienate people, and that's where the leaks start showing up. This is an episode, again, where we get a lot of Heather, and it is frustrating. Mostly because of what I talked about in the last episode, which is this, like, she's supposed to be the expert, and she knows nothing. And that could be something, I think, the way that they're playing her as the expert, the Fisk keeps trotting out, and it becomes useful here. If we thought she was a fraud, or she was kind of a crackpot, that kind of character makes a lot of sense in these. She's like elevated to this level because she is convenient for Fisk, but the show doesn't think that. The show thinks she knows what she's talking about, and she just hates vigilantes so much because of her experience with Muse, which I get, right? I don't want to discount the supervillain almost killed her and turned her into blood art or whatever, but I guess like even before that, she didn't seem to really understand Matt and Daredevil, and I think her big problem, this is kind of why, again, not to blame the victim, but Heather is a character who's a psychiatrist for superheroes and supervillains. Like, not explicitly for them, but like she knows so much about them and she's a psychiatrist. She got one of them in the room with her and she wasn't able to manipulate him a little bit into like doing what she wants. Like, she just doesn't feel like a very capable character. I like that she's compromised, and I like that she exists here in opposition to Kirsten McDuffy, who I think has a pretty solid episode this week. I do think it's funny, and this is another one where these characters, I cannot remember who knows what, but I don't think Kirsten McDuffy knows that Matt is Daredevil, but this is the first time where I get the sense that, like, she's pretty sure he's Daredevil. And, like, she can't say that to Heather because she doesn't trust Heather. We do get the interaction later where she doesn't go, like, you're Matt Murdock. So it's like, maybe she doesn't fully believe it, but she's the opposite of Heather, right? She is a savvy character. She's someone who is able to kind of piece this together as she goes. She manages to get a meeting with Swordsman, Jack Duquesne, played by Tony Dalton. And listen, I just rewatched my video from a couple of months ago. Actually, I think it was like 10 months ago. It was called, like, who should join Daredevil's army? And it was just a question of, like, which characters are going to show up this season to help Daredevil? We see one or two in this episode, and I re-listened to my bit about Swordsman, and I realize now I owe the character and Tony Dalton an apology because I did not appreciate how fun he is. And I do think what's fun about him here, and, you know, we're going to get it all in this episode. He's charming, you know, he's an interesting guy. He's very eccentric. This character is also kind of over the top, right? He's not subtle, and a lot of the characters on the show aren't incredibly subtle, but he may be one of the least subtle characters we meet this season. And sometimes that feels dumb, but I think the two reasons it works here is A, just the show is working, right? So having him say, like, this is just like the Reign of Terror in France, I'm like, okay, that's a little obvious as far as ways to state that. There's other ways to make those illusions. On the other hand, he's just a character that I like hearing talk because he is entertaining. Now, I have not watched Better Call Saul, which is what most people know him for, but yeah, we'll get to it in the end of this episode. There was a moment where I thought he was going to die, sacrifice himself for the cause, and he didn't. So it makes me go, like, does he have a future in the MCU? And then is he going to be the kind of character that just pops up wherever, right? Like, he went from Hawkeye to Daredevil to, like, being in the X-Men show or something. I don't know, but I enjoy that. Next, we get the scene where Karen talks about how everything is bad. Again, a little monologue that I liked, felt real. It reminded me of how I felt recently when certain things are happening in politics and you're just like, we keep losing. Everything keeps going wrong. That is frustrating. And Daredevil, maybe it's because of his Catholicism, he has too much faith to fully, like, give up or give into that. Karen doesn't, and she's just ready to say it. I love that. This is the other thing that happens in this episode. We can't ignore it. Matt's got his shirt off, looks as good as he's ever looked. Like, I don't remember Charlie Cox for this show being, like, super jacked, like having all these abs. Like, you know, he's obviously been in good shape, but I don't remember this. And, good for you, Charlie Cox, and for everybody that gets to watch it and enjoy this, you know? Then we have the governor of New York, and it's interesting because I didn't remember what Kathy Hochul looked like, the current actual governor of New York State, and I was like, hey, does this look like her? And then I looked it up, and yeah, they kind of do. I don't think this is supposed to be that direct of a line they're drawing, where like, this is what the Democratic mayor of New York should be doing. Who even knows? Maybe she's not a Democrat, I don't know. But I think this character's fun. Again, I like that the walls are kind of closing in on Fisk, and there are limitations to what he's doing and how much he can get away with. And this is a big one of them, is like, the city of New York is important, but it's not the entire world. It's not the entire United States, and it's not even the entire New York State. So like, he has people he has to answer to. Then we get another scene. Okay, so talking about scenes that I kind of walked away from this episode being like, oh, that was a fun scene, right? And we'll get to the ones in the end. I enjoyed the interrogation from the beginning of the episode, but then this one, very, very memorable. Part of it is just because Michael Gandolfini's like casually eating a hot dog, and he gets Buck Cashman to eat a hot dog, and that's funny. Now, partially because, and I actually really like this, he's right. Daniel Blake feels like the only person in the room that like understands what's actually going on with respect to the Max Headroom guy. Max Headroom, by the way, is a reference to this very strange thing that happened where a guy went on TV and he had like a mask on, and I think it happened in the 80s, and no one figured out what actually, I don't know the whole story of it, but I know that seems to be what they're kind of going for here. If anything, you could say it's kind of like V for Vendetta, which is also kind of going for that, like the movie. But like, Fisk obviously hates it, and everybody, because they're all so scared of Fisk, and because they know Fisk will fly off the handle and just punch you to death if you're his boxing trainer, who I'm sure he told that guy before the training, like, don't let me not do the training. If I stop, you have to motivate me. And then like, he tried to do that and then get killed. Buck and Sheila are like too scared of Kingpin to tell him the truth, which is just don't let this bother you. The more oxygen you give it, the worse it gets. It is interesting too how much younger Daniel is than everybody else on his team. And this is Kingpin's problem, right? One of his problems is he just can't let anything go. So it is interesting because I feel like we haven't really seen Daniel Blake be right. We've seen him kind of turn into Fisk and like use leverage the way that Fisk does. but I don't think we've seen like why he is actually effective at his job, besides just he is incredibly loyal to Fisk, which in administrations like this, sometimes that's enough, but also you're like, this guy doesn't have terrible instincts. He's just like working for a psychopath, and every so often that leads to a dumb choice. But I also like them bonding. I like the dynamic of these characters. I think I always liked Daniel. I was not always a fan of Buck Cashman, just because I didn't really, I don't know, he didn't feel necessary. Like, of course, Kingpin needs that right-hand man, that Wesley, to do his murders and arrange everything. But it felt like with the AVTF and with Powell and Cole North, like, he had that. Those guys would do whatever he wanted. He could tell them to execute somebody he didn't like for no reason. They just do it. So I never fully understood what we were getting out of Buck Cashman. And now I do, because he is the opposite of little Daniel Blake here. He's got experience. He's very classy. It's like an odd couple. Putting them together in a room is just interesting and fun. And this is where we get introduced to, and I cannot remember if we met her or even just saw her in other episodes, Chief Justice Walter. This is a character who we're obviously supposed to see, look at the wall and go, maybe this isn't so much justice, maybe it's bad. And again, if I was bored by the show or not enjoying the performances, this would feel really heavy-handed, but even though it is that, I don't mind. One thing I know some people aren't humongous fans of when it comes to Netflix Daredevil and Born Again is the lack of actual court stuff. And of course that makes sense, because as things get more exciting and as Matt gets more caught up in these big stories, he can't do court stuff. Like, Kirsten McDuffy can do some, but even this, it gotta get sped through in this episode. But unlike in previous seasons where it was just a normal trial, for this it makes sense because it's a sham trial, so it's like, yeah, you're gonna get that over in like 2 hours, nobody cares. That being said, I would enjoy more court stuff, and I would hope in the future maybe the show can do a little bit more of that. I really like the Hector Ayala stuff from Born Again Season 1. That's definitely an avenue they could explore in the future. Also, I think it's funny we get these clips of people just watching the trial on their phone. And it makes sense because it's like propaganda, right? Fisk is putting it out there. But for me, I was watching that and I was like, come on. Nobody just pulls over their bike to take out their phone to watch a trial. And then I remembered all the times we've done that kind of recently as a society, because there's been some interesting trial and we're like really curious about that. So like, yeah, I guess we would do that. This is another moment where it's like, oh, Fisk is happy because he wins. We don't get to see Fisk happy. We see Fisk kind of content a lot of the time, but in this moment he does genuinely feel like, I gotta win, this is good. I'm gonna throw one thing out here that I was a little confused about. I saw some people saying different things. I think Vanessa Fisk's arc in the beginning of the season is a little confusing, specifically because of the Buck Cashman scene from last week and then this bit when she's laying on the floor. Maybe there's something I forgot. Part of me was like, maybe it's because she doesn't want to get shot by Bullseye and she wants to be out of like line of sight from like windows and stuff like that. But if that was the case, I feel like there's other ways to do that. And it certainly looked interesting. I really don't know what they're going for there. Then we get the big dinner, a little bit of Heather and Buck Cashman. Again, characters that maybe I didn't love before. Putting them together is kind of fun, watching them flirt. And also, I like that they're still being played. Like, while Kingpin does all the, mayor mafioso stuff, Vanessa's doing the political power plays behind the scenes, and that is something. He's also keeping everybody on their toes. It does seem like a little dangerous to get these two involved, because if they break up, you have to kill one of them, I guess, or something. I don't know how this works, but like, the last thing you want is her going rogue, and the last thing you want is him going rogue. Not say that any breakup would end like that, but like, I would imagine these two would have a pretty rough breakup. Mayor does a little toast, which is fun, and then that's pretty much it for that plot line this week. We check back with Kirsten McDuffy. She's watching TV. Again, I've said this last time, I like how the boxing match is like something we can use to chart the progress of the first couple of episodes. So I like the people are like, oh, boxing matches tomorrow. Really excited for that. Kirsten's getting drunk, gets the classic, someone bumps into you and drops a thing, and then it's a note for you by, again, a woman in an incredibly obvious wig. The one thing I love about this scene when she actually goes up and talks to Daredevil is that she's still drunk, and she says, like, listen, I'm kind of drunk. It'd be weird if she wasn't drunk, but it would also be a little weird if she didn't acknowledge it. But it is one of those things you just have to say, otherwise it's kind of awkward. Love Daredevil again turning on Batman voice for this, and I think that line where she's saying, I didn't see anything, is I can use that, reminds me, again, and we get a little bit of this later, people don't know that much about Daredevil. Like, I think it's really interesting that originally he had the full like mask on, like full thing covering his full face. Eventually gets the mask, puts the eye bits in, doesn't need them because he sees with echolocation, does trick people into thinking he can just see like a normal guy. Really makes me wonder, like, what do people think his deal is? I guess people just think he's another Spider-Man, where like Spider-Man can do backflips and it's because of something, some sort of radioactive. I mean, people don't know that either because when would Spider-Man tell them? So yeah, it's just funny thinking about these universes from the perspective of someone who just gets this information from like the news and has maybe seen Daredevil in person once. Because on one hand, you could be like, oh, this guy's not even cool. He's gonna come in and I'm just gonna punch him. So you get why some of the henchmen think they can take Daredevil. And then on the other hand, you understand why most of them would just leave if they saw him because it's terrifying. And again, they don't know. Maybe he's magic. They don't know. But Matt follows all of Kirsten McDuffy's memories, senses and stuff, and he beats up some guys. And then, I like this, something I think is easy to kind of forget because of how cool the fight scene is. Matt went here to blow up some weapons because that was how they were going to make Fisk look bad. And if Matt had done that, all those guys would have exploded, which would have been bad. But instead, Matt chose to save people because that's what superheroes do. They make those choices. And I liked at the end of this episode, and like everything that happens from this point on starts with a choice like that. And I like the look on Matt's face, like, God damn it, I'm gonna have to go save these people. All right. I will say, first couple of times I watched this scene, I didn't really pay too much attention, and I was like, he's opening all of their jail cells by just like touching them, right? What is it, like a little door? Has nobody tried this? Have none of them tried to reach their hands around and open it? And then I realized he's using the key card to like scan all the doors, and it makes more sense. You know, he lets everybody out, he lets Duquesne out, he breaks off a piece of beam or something and gives it to Duquesne, and then we get some swordsman stuff. Now, this for me was the moment where I was like, oh, this is gonna be good. And not just this fight scene or this episode, but like this series, because the series just isn't holding back. If there's gonna be a moment where the swordsman can do swordsman stuff, even if it's kind of stupid, they're gonna figure it out and it's gonna be cool. But again, the moment where it clicked for me was when Jack spins the little beam around and smiles. Because it's like, oh, all right, I'm excited. Like, everybody up until this point has been pretty reserved when it comes to fights. Not like, I guess not reserved isn't the right way to describe it, but they've been reluctantly like, I don't want to have to fight 50 guys. I like that Duquesne is the first character that's like, oh, cool, I get to do swordsman stuff. We get a big long take action scene. So this is what I would call the first hallway fight of this season. It is the one that feels the most like a hallway fight without necessarily being in a hallway. I don't know if you would call the space between all of these cells the hallway or a corridor, because they're in a big room, but it is hallway-like. And this has the hallmark of the new Daredevil hallway fights. Pretty much everything since season 2, where the camera does a thing and then gets really close to a guy and then pulls back, and that's clearly an edit. But I think they do manage to maintain like the continuity of the scene in a way that is not distracting. It's just something that it's hard to not notice. Some really terrific shots here that I think I'm going to remember as like all-time Daredevil shots. Matt throwing the baton and the camera following it as it hits the guy. Great. Love to see the sword fighting bits. Those guys that get hit in the face with one of these improvised swords, that's bad for them. Like, and they deserve it because they're going in and trying to kill people. Like, I get it. There's certain moments where it feels like Matt goes a little overboard, and it's like, you didn't have to beat that guy up that bad. Like, you maybe killed that guy and you probably didn't need to. And that is something you seem to care about. So it's like weird they did that. In this moment, it's like, no, you got to do what you got to do. Especially Duquesne. Like, if you can take some of these guys out with sword fighting, oh my God, that's terrific. The next moment I love in this fight is another Duquesne moment where he gets beaten a little bit. And I was scared because that was the first time I was like, oh no, this character's going to die in this scene. He's going to sacrifice himself to save everybody. He's going to go, Daredevil, I will take care of this. And then just fight everybody with swords and eventually get shot. Especially because now this character is sentenced to what I assume is death. I don't remember what the crime for vigilantism is, but I have a feeling it's pretty severe. So I was like, all right, he's going to go down like that. It's going to be a bummer. Love that he survives in that moment and then over the course of the rest of the episode. Love to see Matt breaking limbs. What a good way to stop guys without killing them. And he's got totally time. Knock a guy out, break his leg real quick. Knock the next guy out, break his leg. As opposed to like smashing their head against the concrete. It's like, this guy isn't going to fight anymore either. His leg's broken. Probably isn't dead. And I will say the MVP of this scene, as much as I love Tony Dalton, the stunt team did a great job, camera people did a great job, is the score. The Newton brothers, who've been working on Daredevil Born Again. I've always been somewhat impressed with the music for this show. Obviously the theme is great, and like there's a lot of other good stuff there. But this fight scene, maybe more than any of the other fight scenes I can remember, is doing a lot of different things. We're focusing on different characters. We're supposed to kind of heighten the danger. And I like some of the things they use for that. I like how much the choreography works into the music. I love the weird chanting or grunting or whatever you would call that. And then the bit where Matt pulls the steam down when it kind of crescendos. Beautiful. So good. So I will say, like, this feels like maybe the most memorable bit of the score for me. There's other bits that are going to come up that I like. But this is the one where I feel like, oh, everything's clicking. Like, this is going perfectly. Oh, right, and then Little White Tiger shows up, and she's like, hey, I'm Little White Tiger. I stole some of their guns and stuff. I like the frustrated face Karen gives her when she looks down and sees the bag and is like, I have to check, because this might be useful, but I do not want to bring on this kid. And again, we kind of talked about this with Daredevil. I love kinda that we still don't really know what this White Tiger thing even does. We don't know if she actually has superpowers. The only thing we will see her do, that for a second I was like, oh, okay, that's her superpowers, is when the tire is popped and there's claw marks. You're like, oh, okay, so she has some sort of claws or something that are activated. And no, just used the knife, the Hector Ayala knife. So again, you get to the end of this episode, you're like, does she have any powers? Or is it just an amulet that makes you feel confident and supposed to scare people? I don't know. But they steal the enormous truck. They drive away. I like that Daredevil obviously is a superhero, Karen Page, superhero, Little White Tiger, superhero, and she just coordinated with Karen Page, right? So, like, she's part of the plan. I also like that Swordsman stays out for the little kind of huddle where they're trying to figure out what to do, and that's why he gets drafted to drive the car, as if he is, like, another Avenger that they all know and love. Like, Matt does seem to trust him, but the idea that it's like, oh, sorry, sir, get in the van. You did great, but you're not driving the car. One of us is going to drive it. Because we have superpowers. Maybe those help with driving. I don't know. Then the episode ends with the good guys driving away in an enormous truck. I have no idea where they think they're going to go. It is not a truck that I feel like can drive down most streets and not be seen, but apparently the Greek woman knows where to take one of those, so that's handy. And then Fisk blows up the guys that if Matt had done what he was planning to do, he would have blown up. And I'm reminded that not only does Matt have, like, echolocation when it comes to, like, being in a hallway and, like, being able to hear kind of what's going on 2 hallways down, he also has the usual Daredevil sense of being able to hear everybody screaming, and, like, certain noises really affect him. It reminds me of how the Ben Affleck movie forced Daredevil to sleep in a little deprivation pod, because otherwise he would just hear people screaming all night, because he just catches that. I don't know if that's the first time he's done this in a while, but that was cool. And yeah, Fisk blew up all those guys that it seemed like he was going to blow up. You know, big day for New York. I like that, like, there is some deniability here, because Duquesne doesn't want to get caught again. Like, he's not going to want to put himself out there because they'll just kill him. But on the other side of that coin, Fisk doesn't want people to know that Duquesne escaped. So as long as Duquesne lays low, he's good. Same goes for all of them, but Duquesne's the one that's really high profile. But yeah, this is where the season gets really good. I think the first hallway fight of the season, and there will be at least one more thing that I'm like, that's a hallway fight, is where the show like really feels like it gets onto the highway and is able to open up a little bit. I am so excited for next week. Next week is my favorite episode of all of them, even though I think there's really good stuff in all of the rest of the episodes that are coming. Episode 4 is my favorite. You will know why immediately when it starts. In fact, very early into it, you'll be like, oh, this is why I likes it. But regardless of that, I think it's just a very good episode. This is where I feel like a lot of people, and it's great that this happened the same week as the Invincible episode that also had a lot of stuff happen, because it just felt like a really big week. I'm really excited for next week, because it is going to be an episode of Invincible, obviously. Love that. Episode 4 of Daredevil, Born Again Season 2, which I really like. And then the first episode of The Boys. Like, there are a lot of these happening at once. And I do think we'll have a fair amount of shows this year. X-Men 97 is coming back with Spider-Man cartoon, Vision Quest, like Lanterns. And like, there is going to be stuff, but this feels like A, the most dense, B, like, these shows are all competing for the same audience, right? These are the 3 most R-rated, like, adult takes on superheroes that are out there now. That's funny. It's as if they all got together and were like, people want to see superheroes blow people up in March, right? And I'm like, yeah, March or April. All right, cool. Everybody put your shows out then. And, like, Daredevil might end up being the best of all of those shows, you know? Speaking of Devil, that reminds me of a video I was watching recently, because this is the part where we do the transition. And this one is going to be an extra hard, like, kind of handbrake one of these, but we're going for it. It reminds me of a video I watched recently by one of my favorites, Lindsay Ellis, and it's called Is There Still a Very Special Place in Hell for Matt Stone and Trey Parker? It's about South Park. Speaking of adult stuff, that's a better transition, but we're going to keep the other bit in because that is what I decided. I really picked it because it has the devil on the thumbnail. About South Park, about an adult TV show that tried to take on issues, much like The Boys, I would say more than these other two. Although this Daredevil is very much tied to the politics of the day. But it's interesting when you have a show like that because you have to make some judgments and you have to figure out what's funny, what you're making fun of, what the characters deem is the correct thing to do. And sometimes you're wrong about that. And how does a show look back, especially when it's been going on for so long, how does it react to itself? Do the creators seem to have learned from it? And especially for a show like South Park that's technically still going on, like how's that going to affect them in the future? So that's a great video. And you can watch that along with all of my videos, early and ad-free, Nando V Movies and Nando Cut videos, along with tons of other videos exclusively on this video sponsor, Nebula. Nebula is, say it with me, a subscription streaming service that I and a bunch of other really cool people helped create. Nebula has evolved so much over the last 7 years. Sure, you can still watch all my videos early and ad-free. You can watch videos by a bunch of other creators you probably already love. But one of the most exciting things about Nebula is our original programming. Tom Scott has a new series called England, where he goes to every English county to find something interesting. Did you check out this first episode where Tom Scott goes to Leicestershire and he visits a bell making factory? You see the entire process, learn how bells are made, and it is not how you would expect, especially since this bell making factory is hundreds of years old, and they're still working with some of the same techniques from a century ago. Tom Scott even gets to use a sledgehammer to break one of the bells a little, because shockingly, it's hard to do. It's hard to use a sledgehammer to break an enormous bell. And each episode of England is going to be on Nebula for a week before it goes anywhere else. On top of that, we got a series that I love watching called Abolish Everything, where someone, maybe a comedian, maybe another YouTuber, makes an argument for something that should be abolished. They state their case, they make a very funny PowerPoint, the political establishment gets to weigh in, and then the audience decides what deserves to actually be abolished. This week they did the championship for the second season. They had a ton of really funny people on it. I've never been on that show, maybe sometime in the future. I think I'd be a fun abolitionist. And then later this year, although hopefully not too much later, Nebula's first original dramatic scripted series, Subliminal, comes out with the episode that I wrote, which I cannot wait for you guys to watch. Nebula is the best way to support all of the creators you already love and all the creators you don't know you're gonna love, but then you're gonna love them when you see them on Nebula. You can also download the videos to your phone, which saves you data when you're not at home. And there are not AI videos on Nebula, so this isn't gonna be like YouTube where you go on and you watch a video in a minute or two and you're like, something's off here, and then you realize like, oh, this video is AI. Which happens on YouTube and other platforms way more than I would like to admit. Nebula, we all got real stuff made by real creators, and that's why it's great. And a year of Nebula is already a steal at $60 a year, $5 a month. But if you go to go.nebula.tv/thenandocut, you can get a year of Nebula for just $30. That is $2.50 a month. It is an amazing deal. Again, go to go.nebula.tv/NandoVMovies to check it out. So thanks for watching. Next week, episode 4. I can't wait. I'm so excited for episode 4. That's all I got. Stay safe. I'll see you around.